I'm Sophia, and this is the ultimate podcast for celebrating all things wonderful about our beautiful island. Welcome to Destination Cyprus. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Destination Cyprus. This is not Easter, no. Obviously the highlight of my career today, it is Carnival. And for those of you who know a little bit about Cyprus, it's quite a huge annual event. So today I'm joined by Stelios Georgiades, who is one of many things. Kalos όρισες.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you with us. I obviously chose to speak to you today because Carnival is something that is so loved by, well, mostly Limassolians, but now it's something that's picked up in most of our cities. And you are such a passionate Carnival goer, lover. You have written a book that, as far as I understand, took you 14 years to compile. You've done about 160 interviews because you're really interested in the history of Carnival. So I thought it would be fascinating to delve into the background of all that. But before we go there, just want to introduce you very briefly. So you started your career with Turkish Studies at the University of Cyprus.
Correct.
And then you moved on to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So you've had loads of roles there, and I don't want to be the one to explain them. So over to you, Stelios, if you wouldn't mind telling us why you chose Turkish Studies, and then a little bit about your career since then.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here with you and share the things about my career and also about my most beloved thing, which is the Limassol Carnival. So I grew up in Limassol. I'm a Limassolian, first of all. I was very passionate with archaeology. I was almost sure I was going to study archaeology. I was studying, even when I was a student in high school, books about archaeology. But the last moment, I chose to study Turkish Studies because that was a new thing at the time. It was a new thing, and that I thought that it was very important in order to understand Cyprus, in order to understand the Turkish Cypriot community, for which we don't know a lot of things and we are not taught a lot of things. 300 years of Ottoman history in Cyprus, which is quite recent, actually left a lot on this island. And I was very happy that finally a Turkish Studies department was established at the University of Cyprus. And so I picked up the chance and I joined the Turkish Studies department. It was an amazing experience because we learned a lot of things about the past of Cyprus, about also the region, because Cyprus belongs in the EU. We have a lot of European culture, but geographically we are part of the Middle East, and we cannot forget that. And we should study the area and our neighborhood in order not only to understand our neighbors, with whom we exchanged a lot of things through the ages. It was not just wars and conflicts. It was also exchanges, culture, bridges, people-to-people contacts. So it's very important to understand ourselves through the studies of Turkey, of the Middle East, etc., and Islam, because Islam is also very close to Cyprus. We have to mention that Cyprus is in the crossroads of Islam, Christianism, and Judaism. So we had big contact with great civilizations of the past and also very popular religions.
It sounds so fascinating. And the thing is that while you're saying that, because I've been reading your amazing book, which honestly fascinating, very eye-opening, but I can see so many parallels now.
Exactly.
And so before we move on to Carnival, tell me a little bit about your role at the ministry, because it's really important for me to understand what has kept you rooted in Cyprus, because you've had amazing opportunities. You've lived abroad. You've been to Portugal, to Italy, to Cuba, and yet you keep coming home. What is your role at the ministry at the moment?
Where I'm a diplomat, I am in the diplomatic service of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Cyprus. The diplomat's role is to be some years in Cyprus, in the ministry in Nicosia, some years abroad, and you have to swift between these two roles all the time, which is great also because it gives you the opportunity to represent your country abroad. But later you have to come back, touch roots, get to know what's happening in Cyprus, get connected with the people, the culture, the development, the economy and everything, and then go back abroad and represent your country and build bridges with other nations and states and civilizations.
So the cultural diplomacy, all the things that you've been involved in, it's now leading me to this point. So that means that for the past 15 years, if not more, because this came out in 2016. So what is the thing that drove you to write a book on the magic of carnivals, well, specifically the Limassol Carnival?
Well, actually, I think we all need a hobby or something to distract us from our duties, from our job. And my book started when I joined the ministry because I was also searching for a parallel hobby, something to keep me away from the seriousness and the protocols of the diplomatic world and the civil service. So I found this amazing project to investigate about the Limassol Carnival because it combined my two favorite things: history, the history of Cyprus, which is amazing and very rich, and also the carnival, because I'm a Limassolian, and like everyone in Limassol, we're really passionate about this.
I was about to say, what came first, the chicken or the egg? But seriously, what did come first? I mean, is it the history of carnival that made us as Limassolians more outgoing, more extrovert and more crazy? Or did it work the other way around? Is it because we are like that at heart that carnival became a thing for Limassol?
It's both.
Okay.
It's one fit the others. But the carnival, it's not only a weekend, because sometimes when you talk to people of Nicosia, they think it's a weekend. But for the people of Limassol, it's 11 days. And now we start also some days earlier. But the fun of the carnival starts many days before Tsiknopemti, which is the first day of the carnival, because if you read the book and you hear the people speaking through the memories of the interviews that I collected, they were preparing for months before the carnival. So the preparation and all this being busy with the carnival and distracting you from the routine, the everyday routine, was an amazing experience. And some people say it was even more fun. The preparation was even more fun before the carnival than the actual event itself.
I mean, I have amazing memories of carnival as a child. And that's not to say that I don't anymore, but there was definitely something about the innocence of society back then, something more culturally authentic, obviously before woke culture and before being politically correct or incorrect. And funnily enough, one of the reasons why I'm dressed as a chicken today is because, you know, when you go into the shops, and this is what's different about back then, because people used to make their costumes, but you go into the shops now and you actually have to think, you know, is there anything that I could wear that might offend somebody? It's really difficult. It's not like it used to be. You know, now, who knows? Maybe if you dress as a policeman, you're offending somebody because that's his job. If you dress as a Hawaiian or a Mexican, you could offend them because it's a nationality. The only thing I could find that I thought maybe isn't offensive is my chicken outfit. So I hope I haven't got any vegans who are going to write in and complain. But things have changed. And, you know, when you read this book, you go back to the heart of what this was before people became so self-conscious. And I just wanted your thought on that, because you've spoken to so many amazing people and, you know, key figures of Limassol society. What is their feeling about the transition, about how carnivals changed over the years?
Well, I think if you read the book, you will realize that there is always a nostalgia for the past carnivals. It's amazing because one of the first articles I found about the carnival, because apart from the interviews, I have to say that I had to investigate and study hard all the old newspapers, all the archives of the old newspapers, which were scattered in many archives around Cyprus. Mm-hmm. We don't have one archive. So I had to investigate in many archives, and that took me also a lot of time. So in one of the oldest newspapers, I found an article which was talking about the carnival in Nicosia in the end of the 19th century. Wow. And it was saying that people were missing older carnivals. So we're talking the end of the 19th century, and they were saying, the old carnival was much better, there was more satire, there were more funny costumes, and now people are becoming a bit more serious in carnival. And I said, oh my God.
How far back does this go then? How far?
Well, the Cyprus carnival is traced back to the Middle Ages.
Wow.
During the Frankish and the Venetian period. And it's very logical because in Europe during the Middle Ages, the Catholics were celebrating in masses the carnival. It was huge in Europe. So we were under the Catholics in Cyprus for 400 years, the French and the Venetians, but we also had a lot of other Europeans living in Cyprus as merchants, as lords, feudals, soldiers, etc. So we were also very cosmopolitan back then. It's not only today. So all these people, they brought their culture and customs and traditions. And I'm almost definitely sure from the references we have that the carnival arrived to Cyprus in the form we have it more or less in the end of the 19th century. I think in the Frankish and Venetian period, which goes at more than 600 years old. That makes it more than 600 years old, our carnival.
And this idea, this concept of satire, masks, disguise, role play, what do you believe that stems from? I mean, is it just some inherent need that people have to just be themselves or be outside of themselves? It always fascinates me how people use it as an opportunity to do or behave the way that perhaps they're afraid to normally.
For sure. I think from the time that the man was created on this earth, needed to, at some point, make a fool of himself or to go in another dimension, psychological dimension. Because when you dress up, you transcend in another dimension. It's like it's not you, it's somebody else. And in this way, you can escape from reality. And escaping from reality makes you more creative, more relaxed. And you discover parts of yourself that you would never imagine you have. But about the mask, we have to say that the mask was used in the ancient time for religious reasons. The mask was really used for religious reasons, and that's why we have in different religions all around the world the use of mask. In Cyprus, we have findings, ancient art crafts from various temples, and since we're talking about Limassol, in Amathus, in the ancient town close to Limassol, we have the small statues of the priest of Aphrodite wearing bull masks. Oh. So they were doing ceremonies or expecting magic or other religious situations where they were using masks. So the mask is something that we were using from the beginning of the humanity on this earth. It's not something new, and it's incorporated in the carnival. Maybe during the Middle Ages, when Christianity was very severe, very strict, and people had to hide their identity in order to be allowed or be able to do the sinful things which were not allowed by Christianity.
I loved in the book. I mean, one of the things I love about it is the Cypriot dialect. But I love the little conversations or people remembering Bellomaskis, going to people's houses dressed up. And some of them were saying it didn't even matter if we didn't have an outfit, if we didn't have a mask, we would chop down the curtains or wear a sheet. And there's a lovely quote somewhere of a little boy saying to his dad, "Dad, of course they're going to know it's you because you've been wearing the same sheet every year for the past decade." But I remember, and it was just such a magical period because my dad would grab us and we'd get in a car and we'd just get dressed up in whatever we had at home. I mean, it was never like massively creative. Yes, it was, but we made do with what we had. And we used to go to friends' houses and they'd have to guess who we were behind the mask. And how do you do that now, though? It's a bit like trick or treating.
Exactly.
I think it's not very safe to assume that you can go knocking on doors anymore, and that's sad as well.
Yeah, not anymore, because we see that with the changes in life, Carnival has to adapt. And according to the interviews I made, the people said that they don't feel safe to open to strangers at 9-10 o'clock in the night, and allow them to enter the house, because we used to enter the house. So people would just open the door in the cold, and we would enter the house and make this play this interesting game of who is who. They had to guess, etc. I think I remember I came to your house, to your mom, who was my English teacher. It just came in my mind right now.
I know. I keep remembering. I keep having flickers of memories and hotel parties. Tell us a little bit about how that evolved and grew in Limassol, because you do get a sense from the book that there was a class system to Carnival as well. It was very much filtering down, wasn't it, from the wealthier families and the beautiful parties and the extravagant hotel rooms.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, the class thing is very interesting. That's why there are carnival studies in a lot of universities now, studying the carnivals around the world, because through the carnival you can learn a lot of things about social and gender issues mainly, and also cultural things in general. So the thing with the class is that the social class, it divided people a lot in the carnival, but at the same time the carnival was resistant to this thing. It was a unifying process and factor, because we see, for example, the Yordamli cinema, which is very close here, and Rialto at the other side, which they had big ballrooms, and they used to empty their theaters, and empty from chairs and create them into big ballrooms. They united people, because people would come and dressed up with masks, and they didn't know who was who.
So it breaks down the barriers, doesn't
Exactly.
it, almost? Okay.
So the people I interviewed said that these big cinemas, they managed to break a lot of social barriers of the society of Limassol back then, which was quite divided in social classes, but less than other towns, because Limassol is a very spontaneous town. People are very spontaneous. That's why we're very hospitable and very open to foreigners, and that's why we have foreigners here. It's not by accident. So Limassolians were always like that. So it was, the class system was not so strict like in other towns, but it was still divided.
And the parade, how did that evolve? Because I can remember when we were children, I think we dressed as the Four Seasons. It was me, my sister, Evelina and Natalie, our best friends. And I think I was autumn. I had leaves on my head. And we paraded around Rio, the stadium. And that was how I remember the big Sunday parade. I think that must have been the children's parade. But since then, it's evolved. It's huge now. It's almost uncontrollable. I mean, it just goes on forever, doesn't it?
Well, we see huge changes on the parades, because 120 years ago or even earlier, the people used to go around the towns on the village, usually on the 2 Sundays, and especially on the last Sunday and Green Monday. So people would just go around teasing each other, wearing even animal skins, very primitive things, curtains, as you said before, and they would tease each other, they would dress up as animals, etc. So this created the first spontaneous parades in the towns. So from the 1920s, the Limassolians, they started to organize it a bit more, to put an order in this. So they say that we're going to do these 2 parades. They put timetables. They offer prizes to the best disguised people. So you see a steady organization of this spontaneous thing, which is probably medieval, leftover from the medieval carnival too.
How many floats and people do we have now on average on the big Sunday?
Well, I think it's about 10,000, if I'm not, or even more, 15,000.
And it starts from the beach, doesn't it? And I think that's just so lovely because, of course, one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is to sort of promote all the wonderful things about Cyprus abroad. And I think it must be such a magical time to be visiting Cyprus. I know people who have cafes or restaurants along Makarios Avenue, and on that day they're going to have tables outside. They're going to make sure people can sit and watch the parade. Now, if you're in the parade, that's another story altogether, isn't it? Because it could take up to an hour for you to actually start moving. So there's so much atmosphere when you're there with your friends at the float. It really is something that I find incredibly special. How do we fare up with other carnivals? Because I heard you before saying that before you move to a country, you Google to check how many carnivals they have. So how would you compare and rate Cyprus to the rest of the world?
Well, I haven't been to many carnivals. One of my projects, my next project, is to go to as many carnivals possible in this life around the world. I've been to the Carnival of Venice. I've been to the Cuban Carnival in 3 cities in Cuba, and at the Carnival of Rio, and I paraded in the Sambodromo.
So when you say you haven't been to many carnivals, which ones I'm missing exactly?
Well, there are hundreds of carnivals
I wouldn't
around
have
the
known
world.
that because
Yes.
you only hear about these. But is it true that we were listed as one of the top? Is it top 5?
Well, it was a news from Euronews or it was from an international.
Well, I think CNN or something.
Yeah, CNN,
which
exactly.
I thought, wow, how amazing.
Well, I think our carnival is very authentic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention, but some carnivals are not authentic in this world. And UNESCO has very strict rules about who can be subscribed in the world list of World Heritage, intangible heritage. And one of the preconditions is that a carnival should have historic continuity. Okay. So the Cyprus, and especially the Limassol Carnival, has a continuity for many years. It's not a reproduction. It's not something. It's not theatrical. It's not something that we are making up. It's a big and very long tradition. So I invite everyone from all over the world to come and experience this because they're going to see Cyprus with a different eye. A lot of people come to Cyprus in the summer because it's for the sea. But I always tell them, come to the carnival because you're going to see Cyprus and Cypriots with a totally different eye. It's really amazing. And for me, carnival is 11 days and every day is extremely special. It's not just the last parade, which is huge and we all feel connected and it's amazing and you have this powerful feeling of occupying the middle of the street because usually there are cars, and that day there are no cars, no motorbikes, no noise, and it's just for us to occupy our city, our space, the public space, and get connected with all the people that live here, whether it's Cypriots, foreigners, with tourists. It's an amazing experience. But I say to people, come and experience the 11 days.
I mean, you're right. I never thought of it that way before, but it's almost a period of the year where you are forgiven for everything. And people are so warm. You know, sometimes you're afraid to talk to a stranger in the street because that's just how we've become now. And there is something about those days of Carnival where everybody's just in a fantastic mood. Everyone's walking around, dressed. Everyone can behave in a way that, like you said, frees them from their routine and normality. What's your sort of standard, your average Carnival like? So in those 11 days, how many things are you going to? I'm curious, what does a Carnival lover do for 11 days?
Well, I try to follow all the range of the Carnival activities, from the very romantic and nostalgic serenades, which they remind me also a lot about my book, which the older years of Carnival. It brings me back to the past. It's a very romantic, they create a very romantic atmosphere. There is, especially when these old people, they sing and you see in their eyes that they remember the older carnivals, the romantic period. I find it really fascinating and beautiful. I like the parties in the middle of the street, in the squares. I love even the parties in the discos, in the pubs and bars. I love to do this pub crawling, as we could say, going from place to place and meeting people and dancing with foreigners, with strangers, with Cypriots, seeing my friends. There is a specific group of friends I always see on Carnival. Maybe I don't see them
the rest of
the year, but I always see them during the Carnival. So every day is really special. And of course, it's like a marathon. I call it the Carnival Marathon because I love to go out every day. And it's really hard because as you go towards the end of the Carnival, you're really exhausted, but you still want to go out. And the great thing is that you have the mask. So when you put the mask, nobody knows if you're really tired or if you're sleepy and if your eyes are closing suddenly, but you know, you look fresh.
I know, I didn't have to worry about my hair today. It's the first podcast when I thought it doesn't matter. And the music, Stelios, I just love, I mean, tell us a little bit about for somebody who's watching this who isn't a Cypriot, how do you explain Kantadoroi and the history of the music? I mean, all you have to do is hear a couple of beats of a traditional carnival song and you're off. It just changes your whole state of mind because it so associates with that period of life. Who are they? How did they come about? How did they form?
Well, we have a very strong influence of these Italian style cantades, which came to the Carnival of Limassol through Athens and through the Ionian Islands, the Corfu, Zante, etc., which have also a very strong Italian influence. So it's this nostalgic serenade, which is also part of the Mediterranean tradition in general, not only in Cyprus and Italy and Greece. But we also had some songs coming into this repertoire directly from Italy, and according to some interviews I got, is because of the links that our soldiers had during the Second World War with Italian or even German soldiers. So we introduced our carnival songs from Germany, from Italy, and in the 50s through from Latin America, because Latin America played a very important role in the music during the 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. So now the Limassol people are always open to something joyful or romantic. I think these are the two main sides and main aspects of the Limassol Carnival, which is something being nostalgic and romantic or being joyful and full of energy. So I think the Italian style cantades and cantadori and the Latin American songs, they suit perfectly with the psychology of the Limassolian. That's why they became like a local national anthem of Limassol.
It's so true. I love this quote in the book, actually. It's by Monica Pieridou, and it says, «Εφιάμε λίγο που την ουσία νομίζω, διότι το καρναβάλι για την Κύπρο ή μάλλον για τους Λεμεσανούς ήταν η πελάρα». And I love the sort of the romanticism and the acknowledgement that, we're all a bit nuts, particularly when it comes to carnival. But it is truly, I see it with my dad, you know, on Tignobemti, he'll probably just hit the streets on his own and walk around and talk to people. And there's people cooking in the streets and drinking in the streets. So it's very much a magical time. And the nostalgia, I don't see it as something pessimistic. Like the nostalgia drives me to have better times and create new memories. And, you know, with my niece, she's going to love being in the parade eventually. So all of these things are so important to our culture. So I wanted to thank you. And I am going to put links for the book online. Are there plans to translate it into other languages?
For sure, I would love to translate it in English. Because I think a lot of people are already very interested and they have told me so. And I think the rest of the world also needs to know about this old tradition of Cyprus, which expresses the Limassol spirit. And also in Turkish, because a lot of Turkish Cypriots who were living in Limassol.
Of course, and now in the neighborhood.
They're also celebrating the carnival. They even do parades sometimes.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yes, in Kyrenia and other places. And they always come during the carnival to watch the carnival or parade. So I would love to, if I could find some sponsors to do this job, because as you see, the book is it's a very costly project, and it was very difficult for me to do the first version. So I would love, and I would invite any sponsors through this podcast, if they're interested, to support the translation of this book in English.
I mean, even the imagery, the archive, the library of photos is amazing. So you obviously at some point are going to leave Cyprus again. You have to. So do you always come back for Carnival? Is it a must that you're always here?
Always. I missed it only once when I was in Rio. And I was extremely sad, actually. Even though I was in Rio, and Brazilian Carnival is also amazing. I was so sad that I missed the Limassol Carnival. I always come back.
I mean, in Rio, because obviously from what we've seen, the costume that you're wearing, that the outfits seem more, I don't want to say cabaret, they're more glitzy. It seems to be more of a dressage rather than a dress as. I don't think I could never imagine someone at the Rio Carnival dressed as a policewoman or a chicken, but do they?
Well, some people do.
Oh, they do. So yes. It's not all just what we see.
Well, what we see in the Sambodromo is one thing, which is a closed area where you have to pay to watch the show. But outside there are other parties in the streets, etc. So there are all kinds of things. But what I loved, what touched me most about the Brazilian Carnival is not this grandiose and these amazing bodies, etc. that people think. The moment I got really moved in the Brazilian Carnival is when I saw these old people who are also taking part in the Sambodromo, but of course the cameras never show them. And when I saw them, in their eyes, I could see the similarity with our older generation in Limassol, and I felt I was at home. I felt at home at that moment. So
there's loads of connections, though, isn't there, with like South America and all these cultures. We have a lot in common, don't we?
Of course, and I think carnival people around the world, they have very common thing, a lot of similarities, because it connects them, the love for life. It's like we see in many carnival songs. Enjoy your life while you're young. Enjoy it to the full. Enjoy it before it's over. I think this is the message of all carnivals: to enjoy life,
live with passion,
live today, and don't take yourself too seriously.
Love that. Okay, so I've bought some scissors. We're going to make some confetti like we used to when we were kids. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask you if you could change. You've traveled around the world, obviously, and you're involved in this exchange of cultures and, you know, creating bridges with other cultures. If you could change one thing about Cyprus, what would it be? So I ask all our guests.
One thing, I think I would do my best if I had the power or a magic power to unite Cyprus. I think this is something which hurts us. It's something we need to do the soonest possible. It's an amazing island with a lot of culture, a lot of history, a lot of heritage. It's a multicultural place, and we need to be united. We're too small to be divided.
Okay, thank you. So 3 words that describe Cyprus to you. If you had to just tell somebody, you only had 3 words to describe your country, how would you describe it?
Well, I would say hospitality.
That's a favorite, yeah.
Multiculturalism. And warmth. I think people of this island are very warm, and I think this is our biggest asset.
Thank you, Stelios. Thank you very much. Honestly, I've really enjoyed this. I'm actually giving this as a gift to my dad on his birthday on Wednesday. So I think he'll love it. There's just the quotes in here. And, you know, it's our Limassol. It's people we know. Beautifully done. Thank you very much. And for everybody who's been watching, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you enjoy your carnival. This is how it was done, wasn't it? You used to cut strips like that and then go like that. We used to spend hours chopping up newspapers and God knows what. Now you just go and buy it and it's ready. But thank you very much for joining us. Remember, you can email us on podcast@cybarco.com and I will have all the links there. And for those watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Don't forget, you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts too. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you, Stelios.
Thank you so much.
Destination Cyprus, brought to you by Cybarco.